Hey guys, so I am making this video to wrap up what has been an incredible couple of months of my life. So back in May, I was like, listen guys, I have a confession. I requested too many arcs on Edelweiss, and what it ended up meaning is that I had a list of 19, and yes, this is color coded, this is how excited I am to make this video, 19 arcs that I was supposed to read in a row. Like, there was no stop. And even by doing that, I didn't get all of these reviews out by their actual release date. But out of the 19 books that I requested, I just finished an incredible run of having reviewed 18 of them basically straight. There was one like blip where I released some history content because I DNF'd one of them. I didn't skip any of them, and I did get 60% of the way into the one that I DNF'd. I just couldn't do it anymore, and we're gonna talk about that here. But I wanted to do a thing where I do a wrap up of all of these books and give you like the lowdown of how that went, and if you missed one, because there was so many in a row. And also, I just want to be like really impressed with myself, right? That was so many books in a row. I didn't think I was going to be able to successfully do it, and I did. So we're going to celebrate that. Again, this list is color coded by the rating that the books got from me. What I want to do is start with some of the best, the top of the list, and then go into the less great. Now, I am not going to be doing full reviews of these. I am going to try to get through the gist of these books as fast as possible. And then you can watch my full review for more if you're interested. I will start by linking reviews up above in the card section. However, obviously there's too many of them for them all to be cards. You only get 5. And so after that, links will go down in the description so that you can click on the ones that you're interested in if you haven't already seen them. Some of these, obviously, I read like 20 weeks ago. So some of them are definitely more in my brain than others, and so I'm also just going to say the title, and I'll put the cover up over here so that y'all can see what they look like and who the author is. To start, we're going to start with my 5-star reviews, and out of the 19 books, there were 2 that I gave 5 stars. These are not in any particular order. So we're going to start with You with a View. Now, this is a kind of second chance, kind of enemies to lovers road trip romance. I've had really good luck with those lately as a thing, particularly second chance romances, which I talk about in that video. But this is the story of our main character. Her grandmother passed away, and they were very, very close. And while she is trying to like deal with this and going through her grandmother's stuff, she finds out that her grandmother, who had like an epic love story with her grandfather, was actually engaged to someone else prior to that, and she never knew this. And so she goes looking for this mystery guy that her grandmother was engaged with, finds him through the power of social media, come to find out that his grandson is her ex-nemesis from high school. These are 2 type A's that just were always butting heads, but did they hate each other, or was there something else going on? You know what I'm saying? Our main character finds out that her grandmother and this ex-fiance of hers were supposed to go on a honeymoon road trip they never went on. And so our main character decides to take that road trip with her grandmother's ex-fiance and his grandson, and obviously sparks and emotions fly along the way. It's wonderful. I love it so much. It was so good and so cute and full of not just the romance, but about like grief and loss and love and family. It was amazing. I'm not doing a good job doing these fast. We're gonna have to get better. So the second book that I gave 5 stars to was Knockout. This is the 3rd book in Sarah MacLean's Hell's Bells series, so I'm not going to give you too much of the plot because it might be spoiler and I don't want to do that to anyone. But let's just say that this was my most anticipated book of the series. This series covers the lives and the escapades of 4 women in the Hell's Bells in a historical London romance. And these women are considered not society's like followers, right? They are, you know, too brainy, too brash, and they use their non-welcome to society status to help like attack the patriarchy and like protect women in their society. And the third book was about Imogen, who is their chemist, but also just likes to blow things up. I was really anticipating her romance, and I was worried because of that the book wouldn't be good, because I had such high expectations, but it met those expectations. It was really good. I really loved it, and I highly recommend this author and this series. So if you don't know, I use Storygraph to rate my books. I still am on Goodreads, but like my real feelings end up on Storygraph because it allows for quarter, half, and 3/4 stars. So I rated one book 4.75 stars, and I feel really bad about it, but I'm gonna explain why it didn't get all the way to 5. So this is Sammy Espinosa's last review, and this is the story of Sammy Espinosa, who is a music critic, and she is about to lose her job until she tells her editor, I think I can find a very reclusive like boy band member essentially, who is about to put out his own solo album, but it's like really hush hush and no one knows where he is or what the album sounds like. He happens to be making this music in her old hometown, and so she's like, yeah, I can totally get him to talk to me. The secondary reason being that when they were in their teens, they hooked up for one evening, and Sammy thinks that she can like leverage this into all of this secret knowledge. It also in the end ends up being about, again, family and love and loss. Sammy never knew her father. He died before she was born, and she believes that his family never wanted anything to do with her. Of course, they still also live in this hometown, so there's like that also going on, and the romance between our characters. The reason that this didn't get 5 stars from me is because the tension in their relationship is based off of Sammy not telling him everything, and that goes on so long. There's miscommunication, there's withheld information, and that's a huge pet peeve for me. Not a fan. So I couldn't feel like I could give it the full 5 stars, because there was always, while I was reading, that thing in the back of my head like, ugh. But it's a really good book. It made me cry in parts. It's a feelings romance novel. So I rated 2 books 4.5 stars, and again, these are in no particular order. The first one I'll talk about is Will They, Won't They? This is a Hollywood second chance romance about 2 co-stars on a like teenage supernatural show that got really, really popular. They were together during the first season. It ended terribly. That romance was a huge secret, so no one really knows. And now they're being brought back together to do like a final farewell season, and they have to deal with all the complications of that and their past baggage and who they are now as adults. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars because I had a really rough time with the beginning. In the beginning, because they both hated each other, they were not being nice people to each other, and I was struggling, and I was like, am I really gonna want these 2 characters to get back together? Like, ugh. It did even out. It became a really, really good book, but that opening was just like a little bit like, ugh, don't do that to each other. But again, it's worth it if you can get past it, especially if you're really big into like Hollywood, second chance. Excellent book. The other book that I gave 4.5 stars was Codename Charming. This is the second book in the Palace Insiders series. I did review the first book in this series, and I linked to that in my review of Codename Charming. Long story short, this is an alternative contemporary England where our main character in this one has just become the personal assistant to the new consort to a princess of England. This consort is not very good at his job. He's always making a mess, but he loves his wife so much. But because he's always getting into trouble, he also needs a large bodyguard force, and this is an opposites attract romance between our cute, petite, artsy, fun-loving, assistant and his big, burly, stoic, silent bodyguard, and them coming together, and it made me laugh out loud in so many different places. I loved it so much. It was so cute and funny. The first book in this series was good. I think the second one was better. The first one was a romance based basically on the Great British Baking Show, so like you really can't go wrong. So I rated one book 4.25 stars, and that was That Summer Feeling. This is a romance novel laced with adult nostalgia. The setting is an adult summer camp. The entire point of it is for either people who as children were able to go to summer camp and have great nostalgia for that and want to get back to that, or as adults, they never went to summer camp and they want to be able to get that childhood experience. So it's really funny. There's a lot of family that goes into this. The reason that I gave it 4.25 stars is that there's not really a lot of conflict necessarily. It is a coming to know oneself later in life. The main character does not realize necessarily that she's attracted to women, and so this is kind of like a come to self-realization moment, which is really wonderful. But outside of that, it's focused in love and fun and found family and relationships and all that kind of stuff. So there's not really like a big feelings or tension thing, and that's fine in romance novels. For me, I like having those extra elements, but if you were looking for that summer feeling encapsulated in a book, this is absolutely that. Just a fun, flirty, found family, queer book that is not too up in its feelings. Everybody's having mostly a good time. So I gave two books a 4-star rating. The first of those is The Boyfriend Candidate. This is a follow-up book to a book that I read and reviewed last year that I think is one of the most interesting romance novels I've ever read. It has some really hard questions about forgiveness, and I thought it was really interesting, and I don't think a lot of people have read it. This book is about the sister of the woman at the center of that first book, and she is a librarian who gets caught kissing a person who is running for office, and he has a really bad reputation as a playboy, and so his office comes to her and says, hey, will you pretend to date him while the election is going on so that the press isn't running all these stories about he just like kisses random women. So it is a fake dating story. I just felt like it was more of a typical romance novel, and that's not a bad thing, but I really was fascinated by the first one, and so this one kind of going back to more normative romance ideas, I was like, oh, that's a little disappointing. Even though it's a wonderful book, as a librarian, the main character being a librarian, she leverages her fake relationship with this politician for funding for her school library and like reading and teacher reform, and so I really loved that element. Again, I was just disappointed because it wasn't as like morally gray as the first one. So the other book is The True Love Experiment. This is also, I believe, technically a second book in a connected series, but I didn't read the first one, so bear with that in mind. This one is about a woman who is a romance writer who is in a rut, and she is approached by a gentleman who is producing a reality TV show, and he thinks that she would be the perfect person to headline this show, which is a dating show that ends up being like based on romance tropes, as she kind of helps him to make it into a TV show. So it's got a lot of meta commentary on romance novels, which is really funny. But of course she ends up going to this dating show to like find her Prince Charming, when all along she's falling in love with the producer behind the scenes. And it was really funny, especially if you love romance novels. It's like a book written for us, because there's a lot of different trope jokes and all this other like insidery stuff that you wouldn't get unless you're a part of the romance book community. I did like it. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's my like favorite thing ever. I thought it was a fun spin. I'm just never really a fan of books where like she's ostensibly going on dates with other guys while falling in love with this guy, and it always ends up feeling a little bit weird to me. So I wasn't able to give it 5 stars, but if that doesn't bother you, it's a great book and you should read it. Okay, so weirdly, the largest number of books on my list, I rated 3.5 stars. And I don't know what I was thinking putting them in yellow, because this is really hard to read. Okay. So again, these are in no specific order, but the first is The Duchess Takes a Husband. This is the only other historical romance on this list besides Knockout. It is the 4th book in a series called Gilded Age Heiresses, and this is about a group of American women whose families are very, very rich, new American money, and so they move to London to marry into the aristocracy. I really, really liked the first 3 books. Those were all out when I started, and then the 4th one I was waiting for, and I got the ARC. The 4th one, apparently, according to the author, wasn't even really planned, but she, as a character, deserves her happy ending. She is married when the series starts. That husband is elderly and he dies by the start of the 4th book, and he is not a nice man. This book is just, she deserves love, but she has a lot of trauma to get past to find it. This book is also, and the series in general, is a lot about like women's rights as well in this London aristocratic society. It's really interesting. This one was definitely just clunkier than the first 3, and I don't know if it's because those were more planned out or what was going on there, but it just didn't flow as well, which is where it gets 3.5 stars. I still really like this series, and I'm glad that this character got her happy ending, but at the same time, it just kind of didn't work as well as the first 3. So I still recommend it, but know that the last book is kind of just like a little herky-jerk there till the end. So then we have a contemporary romance called Ciao for Now, and this is by an author who, again, I read a book by her last year, and I thought in the ending, even though the writing wasn't super smooth, the ending tried to do some really interesting things that I'm not really seeing a lot of other romance novels try to do. So when this book was released, and it was basically like Project Runway, but in Italy, I was like, yes, I will read this. I think it tried to follow more stereotypical romance elements. There is a main character who is a university student from America. She is a little bit older than her classmates. She went back to college a little bit later in life. And she got this internship in Italy to learn from designers, and then she and the 2 other people she went with will like compete with this design house at the end of their internship, and one of them gets like a design made. Project Runway, but in Italy. And she has a meet not cute with a man in a cafe. She basically spills stuff on his laptop. It's very terrible. Come to find out that this grumpy grump is the son of a professor that is hosting them. And so not only is he like related to someone who has part of her life in her hands, because this professor is a judge of the competition, he is also living in the same villa with them. So it's all very awkward, proximity, grumpy sunshine. I wouldn't necessarily call it enemies to lovers. He's just very bemused by her. And it's got a good armchair travel setting if you want to read a book set in a foreign country because you're just like not traveling right now. It is really wonderful for that. Otherwise, it was decent writing. It wasn't going to blow me out of the water, but I did enjoy it. So the next book I rated 3.5 stars is a really interesting one. It's Forget Me Not. It is a second chance romance between a wedding planner and a florist. He's an architectural florist, but he does a lot of things with weddings. That's how they originally met and fell in love and started seeing each other, and then it went very, very sideways, but they're being thrown back together by this huge wedding that can make or break her career, so they have to figure out a way to work together. The thing about this book is it's a dual POV, which means that both characters get chapters, but she tells all of the chapters set in the present, and he tells all of the chapters set in the past. And I felt like the characters as they were being described were not the same people. And not in the sense of like, obviously in the past, they acted one way, in the present, they might act another. It was just the characterization was really odd, and it kept throwing me off because I didn't feel like I was necessarily entirely reading like the same characters' stories. I still really did love it. I think it was a really interesting choice to see both the first chance and the second chance. It also did mean that some information was withheld, obviously, because you didn't want, it can't come up because that story is still unfolding as well in the past. Again, really interesting. I don't think the execution is 100% there, but also just very sweet and adorable, and I love a second chance romance, so 3.5 stars. I also gave 3.5 stars to The Blonde Identity. This is a book that I know I gave it 3.5 stars when I rated it, and I wanted to be honest, but when I went and made my review, I'm not certain that I would hold it to 3.5 stars. This is a spy thriller romance where the main character wakes up in Paris, has amnesia, and is being chased by mobsters. And she's like, oh, I'm a spy. And she's saved by a very hot other male spy, and he's like, come with me and I'll save your life. And she's like, this is great. The other guys are mobsters. And she's like, am I a spy too? And he's like, no, you're the identical twin sister of a spy, but they think you're her and your life is in danger. And obviously from there are even more twists and turns. There's a lot of action, guns, flying bullets, and this romance between these two characters who are trying to stay alive while falling in love. I had a lot of issues with the attempt at humor in this book. I titled that video, "This book was not written for me." The reason being that the humor was just so ever present. To me, humor works best when, you throw a line in, every once in a while. This book felt like it was just overwritten. I don't know, it just really began to make me kind of like you've had too much sugar, right? It's like it's not fun anymore, and it wasn't funny anymore. And I know some people really enjoyed that. It made me feel a little bit like I was reading a YA book, felt like it was a little bit young. So you can watch my review for more on that. I really wanted to like it more than I did. I think it's okay, but just not for me. I think it's really funny that the next book that I rated 3.5 stars after that is The Witch is Back. This was my most recent and my last review in this list. This book is definitely not keeping that rating now that I've made my review. I actually ranted quite a bit in that review to the point where I stopped filming and I was editing it and I was like, oh, I try not to be like rude, right? Like there's a reader for every book and a book for every reader. These are just my opinions. But I struggled with this one. So this is a witchy romance. It is a second chance-ish romance. This is about two people who are both witches, and when they were very young, they became friends and their parents decided to have them betrothed. And so growing up for their entire lives, they've known that they were gonna get married. Our main character, she fell in love with him. He did not necessarily feel the same way about her, and then basically on the eve of when they were supposed to get married, he just up and walked away, and he's been gone for about 7 years. And so the start of the book is when he reappears, acting like nothing is happening, like, hey, fiance. And she's like, what are you talking about? It started off strong, but eventually she just kind of like caved to him, and then other bits of the plot got weird, and I felt like their relationship, despite the point of this book being that like they were too young when they were first trying to like be together, and now they're older and wiser and more adults, and it just never felt like that. It felt really, really young and emotionally just not all the way there. And again, other parts of the plot got weird. So you can watch me in that review rant away. But yeah, that 3.5 star rating is it's not staying there. So I rated one book 3.25 stars, and that was The Curse of Saints. This is the only fantasy romance book on this list. I don't read these often because often my complaint is there's not enough romance in my fantasy, and this was absolutely the case here. I read it because the main character was compared to the main character of Throne of Glass, which is one of my favorite series by Sarah J. Maas. She is an assassin slash spy master for the queen of her country, but she's also hiding some special powers that may or not make her a prophesized saint. So there's also like a little bit of like the Grisha series in there as well. The world building felt very omnipresent. There was a lot of it in there, and because of the way the book is formatted, you spend part of it in her home country, and then she goes traveling to a whole other country, and then there's all this other world building and new characters, and you just can't find your feet, or at least I felt like I couldn't. The romance, when it happens, is between two characters who like are enemies, but like he's not really an enemy, and they try to throw in a love triangle last minute. There was a lot of things just not, I think, connecting in this book. However, I would be potentially interested in reading a second book to see if, now that we've established the world, the religion, the politics, that it gets to be different. And so maybe it would be a little bit smoother, but I'm not gonna like knock down the door to find it. So I rated 2 books 3 stars, and the first one that I'm going to talk about is Mismatched. This is a romance novel where, in like a contemporary setting, there is a company that is selling that they have an algorithm that matches you with your soulmate. And so our main character, she has been like out of luck finding someone to love her and have a relationship with. And so she dumps all of her savings into this company. It spits back a name, and that name is an ex-boyfriend who completely broke her heart. They had a terrible breakup. This is a second chance romance. So eventually they meet up because of this, and he agrees to kind of play a part with her so that she can try and get her savings back from the company, which is very obviously a fake because they are not meant to be together. They have tried this before. I liked it. It was interesting. It had an interesting concept. And it really did play with the idea of like, are there soulmates? Is there an algorithm that you could like of compatibility that you could match people up with? In the end, I wasn't completely sold on the relationship. It didn't go as far as I really wanted it to. But again, it was 3 stars, right? The book was fine, just not one of my favorite things on the entire face of the planet. The other book that got 3 stars was Rebel King. This is the second book in the Deviant King series. So this is a dark romance, a dark fae romance set in Las Vegas. So this book was really interesting. The first book, which I also read and reviewed, had some interesting components to it. And what felt really bizarre about this book, and I'm not really gonna go into it in case I spoil the first book, but it really felt like it was rehashing a lot of the plot lines from the first book, basically trying to string you along to get you to the third book where the finale is going to be. The setup for the romance for the third book is far more interesting, and I'm into it and I will probably read it. But I think Rebel King is like quintessential middle book problems, where the first one started an interesting series, got you interested in the characters, and the second book is just trying to hold you along to get you to the finale of the overarching plotline. Quintessential middle book problems. It was fine. So now we're getting into the less fine. So the one book I rated 2.75 stars was a Love Catastrophe, and I think I have learned that this author is just not for me. The main character of this book is known as the Kitty Whisperer, and there's a lot of innuendo attached to that, but she really does just like cats. She ends up cat sitting for a guy who has become responsible for his mother's elderly and terrible cat while she is in the hospital, and it's a grumpy sunshine situation. The number of puns, the relationship, it just never sat well with me. It just really felt juvenile in places and like awkwardly written in others. And I just did not enjoy that reading experience, and I kept reading it thinking, well, I have enjoyed a Helena Hunting book, so I'll keep reading and maybe it will redeem itself. And also, like, she's an author a lot of people like, but I think it's the 3rd or 4th book by her that I've read, and I liked the one, Kiss My Cupcake, which I reviewed on the channel, but I haven't really liked one since. The last book I tried from her, I DNF'd. So I just think that this is not an author that works for me. The way that she writes the romances doesn't work for me, and I just won't do it again in the future. So the last book that I finished, and then I'll talk about the book that I DNF'd, was Double Decker Dreams. This is about an American who is working abroad in London, and from her apartment, she sees a guy on a bus. And she falls in love with the idea of who she thinks this person is. She finally gets up the gumption to get on the train to meet him, and he is another American from her same Midwest state, and she is upset with him that he does not meet the like pretend person that she thought that he was. And that entire sequence really put me off. I was absolutely not a fan. From then on, I was just like, ugh, this relationship feels a little weird. It's uncomfortable. And again, he like realizes that she thought he was someone else and that she was disappointed in him, that he wasn't her made up guy of her dreams. It was really awkward. And I understand what the book is trying to do, basically talking about how like expectation and reality are two different things. And the things that you want and need might be different from the things that you think you need or you think you want. And you have to be willing to kind of deal with reality, right? Not every guy is Prince Charming. I get all that. I did not like the execution. It made me uncomfy. I kind of thought maybe he might have deserved better, but it's fine. You can watch my whole review on that for more if you want to see me kind of talk about that. So I did DNF one book at 60% of the way in, and so I might talk about this one like maybe a little bit more. So this book is Play to Win, and this is about a woman who is married but is separated. She married her high school sweetheart. He basically walked out on their marriage, basically saying, I can't support you, I can't do this, and she hasn't seen him for an ungodly number of years. At the beginning of the book, she wins the lottery, and basically in that state, she is potentially legally obligated to give him some of her winnings. So she reaches out to him basically saying, how much money would I need to pay you for a divorce? Because she won the jackpot. She is now very, very, very rich. And the guy is like, this is the sign I've been waiting for all of these years. I was always still in love with you. I want to get you back. And so he asked for money to do renovation on his family's house, which is like right down the road from where she's living. And so he comes back and they're now interacting with each other in this house where they had their teenage relationship while he fixes it up. I did not like this relationship from the beginning. It was very uncomfortable for him to basically have been gone for 7+ years and then to re-show up like, no, I still love you, I'm gonna get you back. Because like he didn't choose to reach out to her, right? She reaches out to him and he's like, ah, this is the sign that I've been waiting for, that I can get you back. And she very rightfully is like, I don't really want you in my life because the last time you were here, you really messed it up. You did a number on me, you broke my heart, and you basically left me without any warning. And I was just like, yeah, don't do that. Don't get back together with him. And I kept trying and trying and trying and trying, but every single time they had like a romantic scene, I was just upset because I didn't think that he was really redeeming himself. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't really recognizing the amount of damage that he did to her. And it's possible that, again, they resolve that in the last 40% of the book. But with that not really being dealt with or really even acknowledged by him 60% of the way into the book, and them getting closer and like rekindling their relationship, I was just like, you know what? No. I think that you should stay broken up and I'm gonna break up with this book because I really just can't. I was like rage texting Michaela and sending her sections and I was just like, I don't like this. I don't like this relationship. And it is not rare for me in second chance romances to question if the party who did wrong or the parties that did wrong really made up for their indiscretions in the past. But a successful second chance romance, which is why I love them, has a relationship that had deep-rooted problems in the beginning, and now this is them coming back together with all of this history and talking about it and communicating about it like adults and becoming better people for the other person, or like just having grown up more and now being like, I recognize what I did wrong, like I've already done this self-growth. I really like that. I think it's really interesting. And again, I also like books that do ask questions about forgiveness and what can be forgiven and how do we forgive, and we're all human. I just was not getting the vibe from this book. I felt really uncomfortable that they were getting back into like romantic situations, and I just couldn't do it. So at 60%, I put it down. It was the only book that I didn't get done. I felt really terrible about it. And to a certain extent, I feel bad about it now because now I have to be like, I only missed the one book. But it was just peeving me so bad. I couldn't do it. So I didn't, because life is too short to read books you don't like. So that was 19 romance novels that I read in a row. If you're still here, oh my God, thank you. I don't know how long this video is going to be after I edit it. I assume quite long. I will again link all of the reviews, somewhere that you can go find them and watch and read more about these books if you are interested. I'm still just really proud of myself on what I accomplished, and I look forward to reading either literally anything else, maybe even some nonfiction, or like just taking a break from all these deadlines, because that was a really stressful set of weeks where I felt like duty bound to get a review out every Monday. So thank you so much for going on this journey with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.